Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Dr. Sophia ObGyn Podcast. I'm an ObGyn practicing for over 15 years in my native New York City. And I love to help women learn about their bodies, empower them, and embrace themselves. On this podcast, we talk openly and with heart about all things affecting women, from pregnancy, menopause, periods, sexual health, fertility, and so much more. Disclaimer: this is general medical information based on my professional opinion and experience. For specific medical advice, please refer to your physician. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Dr. Sophia ObGyn Podcast. Today, I will be speaking on a very touchy subject. The subject is herpes. Herpes.
People don't even like to say that word.
They don't even like to say that word.
Yeah.
I agree with you. And so that is the reason why we had to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
We've just got to, put a pin in it, burst the bubble, and start talking. As always, I am here with my good friend and co-host, Touseef Mirza.
Hi, everyone. So we had done a previous episode on STIs, STDs, and we did talk a little bit about herpes, but we really wanted to take a whole episode to just dig into this type of STD, just because
it just has so many connotations, stigmas, just badness all around it. And it makes people feel so terrible when they get this diagnosis. And it's just, I felt like, for the amount of patients that I see on a relatively regular basis that I have to kind of either give this news to, they really were completely unaware. And I just realized, okay, people just need more education. We need to talk more about it and talk about it in a way that really destigmatizes this virus, this disease, so that people can feel a little bit more empowered to live their lives more normally.
So let's first start with the basics. So we already said that herpes is a sexually transmitted disease or infection. How would you describe what herpes is if somebody says, what is herpes?
Well, first thing, actually, herpes, not all of herpes is considered sexually transmitted. So let's start there. When we think of herpes, there's type 1 and type 2 herpes, or HSV. So
those are the different types.
Those are the different types, HSV, and it's HSV1 or HSV2 when we're thinking about herpes. And herpes type 1 is what people associate, or what we think of as causing cold sores. Usually affects areas around the mouth. And to be honest with you, most people get herpes type 1 when they're very young, because they probably get it from adults around them. You're a little kid, or, and adults around you are, oh, you're so cute, and they give you a kiss, or whatever the case may be in terms of how you get it, because this is a virus that you get through genitally, or to the genitals from oral to genital contact. And so HSV type 1 actually is the one that can be both sexual or non-sexual contact.
But would you say most of the time it is transmitted mostly like orally?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And that's why it's associated with what we consider and what we, in layman's terms would usually call a cold sore.
So cold sore is essentially a herpes type of
virus. Yes. People who get cold sores have HSV1.
Okay. All right. So that's HSV1. So what about herpes from a genital specific perspective?
So HSV2 is the one that we associate as being genital, or what we call sexually transmitted. It occurs typically through sexual contact. And the thing is that it doesn't necessarily need to only happen through penetrative sex. It's through close sexual contact, because The virus can be shedding and can be in areas such as on the labia, it can be on the scrotum. It's not only through, for example, an exchange of bodily fluids, but rather the close contact with the virus.
So you said the word shedding. What do you mean by that?
So shedding the virus just means that you have viral particles or parts of the virus that your body is kind of eliminating. But that process can be happening whether you have symptoms or not, which is a part of why herpes in general, whether it's type 1 or type 2, is a virus that is so easily spread, number one, and number two, and why it's so common, because you can have spread of the virus without having symptoms of the virus.
All right, so let's just go back for a second. So when we're talking about the virus that is shedding, so the virus is basically some cells.
Some viral particles or viral cells.
Viral
yes,
cells.
Sure.
And where do they typically live in the genital area, like for a woman, for example? Is it inside of her, in her cervix?
No, this is my point. My point being that that's why it doesn't necessarily only have to come from penetrative sex. Women can have these lesions in any part of the genitalia or genital area. So they may experience it on the buttocks, they may experience it on the labia, they may experience on the perineum, they may experience it around the anus. And when we're talking about what they're experiencing are what we call herpes lesions. And those typically can look like small blisters, bumps, little tiny cuts. It's the great masquerader. It can look like anything sometimes. It resembles so many different things.
So you're saying that it can be anywhere from the vulva all the way to the back towards the anus to the buttocks and also inside the woman. Is that what you're saying?
Correct. Yes, it can still, and it can also be on the surface of her cervix. It can also be on the walls of the vagina. It can also be at the level of her urethra. Oftentimes when people have
even
the urethra, yes, because oftentimes when people get their initial outbreak, the only reason why they know is because they may have a sensation like they can't pee. And part of that reason why are that the peeing is extremely painful. And then that's the first sign that, like, wow, something's really wrong. Let me go to the doctor or what have you. And then they find out that they were exposed to herpes. So I just want to take it back a step. First of all, let's think about what are the symptoms of herpes and what does herpes look like? Like I said, it can be the great masquerader. And when it comes to symptoms, again, even that is so vague. And it's a part of the reason why most people don't know that they even have it. People who have herpes say that their symptoms can be anywhere from a little bit of itchiness, burning, tingling, pain, pins and needles. Burning, yes. Ants crawling on them. It's a very odd sensation. They just feel like weird. They feel like they're swollen perhaps, and they're not. So it can feel like so many different things. It can feel like they have a little cut. It can feel like a small ulcer. It can be like a pimple.
So when you said pimple, is it more like
a little bump, like a pimple would be?
Okay, so I'm thinking about like physically how it looks like. So it's not like, I just have the vision right now, like poison ivy is a different type of bumps where it's like, it's just spread everywhere.
Right. No, this is not typically spread everywhere, or certainly not in what we call recurrence. It can be spread everywhere and have a more, that kind of what you're describing on the initial outbreak, where it's kind of all over. And especially if we're talking about genital herpes, where it can be all over. If we're talking about a woman, all over her vulva, inside of the vagina, at the level of the urethra, where she has multiple what looks like ulcers
When you say ulcers, what do you mean by that? What
So
is that?
ulcers look like if you had a cut and peeled off the scab.
Okay. Thanks for the visual.
Sorry, you asked. You asked.
I did.
But they can be like micro. It could just look like you cut yourself shaving. And this has happened to multiple people. Women shave all the time. So just imagine that herpes can look just like as small as that or as big as, little blisters or bumps or pimples, clustered, not clustered, only one, maybe a couple in together.
So that's even like for the first time you ever get it. It could be like 0,
exactly,
or it could be
like on 10.
all over the place.
That is correct.
Okay.
That is correct.
And is it the same thing, like the same type of effect for men as well?
It can be.
Okay.
It can be. They can experience difficulty urinating. They can experience ulcer-like lesions, things that are tender. That's another really key thing, is that when you touch it, it hurts. And I will say this, oftentimes when you get the first initial outbreak with herpes or the first exposure, it's because it's a virus, it causes typical viral illness type feeling, which are associated with flu or like a cold. Sometimes people describe the concept of having had like cold-like symptoms or flu-like symptoms. They feel fatigued, they feel tired, they feel feverish. And then 2 weeks later, they then have these little bumps, ulcers, or what have you in whatever area they were exposed.
That first part is when the body is trying to fight it off,
Yes,
basically?
that is correct.
Okay.
That is
like when we have an infection, when we have a flu.
That is correct.
Okay. Also, we know that herpes, you might still, even if it's not itching, you might still predispose somebody to genital herpes.
The thing about herpes is that you can have no symptoms, meaning you're not in pain, you're not having flu-like symptoms, you're not having itchiness, discomfort, tingling, you don't have any signs of a blister, a pimple, a cut, an ulcer, none of those things, but you still have the potential to transmit the virus to someone else. So that is probably one of the key takeaways here in terms of herpes, is the fact that it can be spread what we call asymptomatically. What does that mean? You have no symptoms at all, and yet you're able to pass it on to someone else. Now, granted, that someone else is someone who is also susceptible to getting it. At the end of the day, viruses are opportunistic, and herpes is no different. What does that mean? It means that for the person who may already have herpes, if that person is a very healthy person, they don't really get sick in other ways, they typically may not have any symptoms at all of herpes. It just kind of is happening in their body. They still have it. Their bodies are constantly fighting it.
So it doesn't show up.
So it doesn't show up, but it doesn't make it that they can't transmit it. And that's where the problem is that people can have the virus, never know that they have it because they never get any symptoms, and yet they are still able to spread the virus.
And you might all of a sudden start to have symptoms, even if for like 2-3 years you had no symptoms. So it can also appear
all of a sudden. That is another major.
That's so tricky, right?
It's such a tricky, I'm telling you, that little bugger. It's such a tricky thing because you may have been exposed to herpes. Your body mounted zero response in the sense that you had no symptoms, you didn't get a flu-like illness, you didn't get any pain, blisters, anything. You didn't have any problems to urinate, you didn't get anything. You had no idea. And that was 1, 2, or 3 partners ago that you were actually exposed. Now you're, for whatever reason, let's say you get a really nasty cold. You get really kind of torn down with with some other viral illness,
Mhm.
or even like, like, who knows, pneumonia, God forbid. A week later, all of a sudden, you have this like weird discomfort, itchiness, pain even, only to find that you have little bumps perhaps around your labia on one side or the other.
So when we say labia, just so everybody's clear, where is the labia?
Part of the vulva.
Okay.
We're still talking about women's body parts.
Okay. So where is it around the vulva?
It
The
could be anywhere. The labia.
Yeah, the labia.
Well, the labia are the lips of the vagina. The vulva, it encompasses where we see the clitoris, we have the labia majora, minora, all those things. So you kind of had the flu a few weeks ago, and then now all of a sudden you get this thing. So you kind of like, you're like, this is weird. I feel weird. Maybe I cut myself shaving, big one. Or the other one that I get all the time, I sat on a public bathroom.
And that's how I caught it.
And I must have something because I sat on a public bathroom. Not that's how I caught it. That's not it. It's not how I caught herpes. It's that when they come in and they have some discomfort, symptom, a little pimple, a little something, and they say, I think something's wrong because I had to use a public restroom.
Just like something's wrong.
Right. Exactly.
Because of that. Okay.
Yes. But this is what I'm saying with how easy it is to be the misnomer, and then later on only to find out, no, that's actually a herpes outbreak that's happening because your immune system went down, from the flu that you had a couple of weeks ago. And now that virus, the herpes virus that's been sitting in your blood for 2 or 3 years, has an opportunity to show itself.
That was an example, but you don't have to have your immune system down to necessarily have symptoms either. You could still have it. Or does the immune system has to be low in order for the herpes virus to present itself?
You may not feel like your immune system is down. A person may not feel like they are under the weather, etc., or that their body may be run down, but their body on the inside, yes, is low in terms of perhaps their immune system or their defense mechanism for fighting the virus. That's the reason why it expresses itself, and it doesn't always express itself. Of course, that's exactly what we're saying, that people may have the virus and may never have a symptom ever. But the virus has an opportunity to show itself, particularly when the immune system is down.
So how do you know that that's what you have, that you have herpes? Do you have to get a test? Do you have to go, can you make your own assessment? Do you need to go see the doctor?
So herpes is tested in a couple of different ways. Primarily, we can test herpes through the blood. So it's a simple blood test that one can ask for when they go to their doctors to have, let's say, blood work done for STI testing. The only thing is that herpes is not a part of your general, sexually transmitted panel. It's one that you have to ask for, usually specifically. And the reason why is because herpes A is an extremely common disease. And unfortunately, it's one where we are not able to say, you got this from this particular partner. This last person that you're sleeping with, that's how you got it. It's not like if someone who has chlamydia, that I can say, you likely got this chlamydia within the last 30 days, and it's probably from this partner, whoever this person is that you're with.
And chlamydia being another sexually transmitted disease.
Infection. So the problem with herpes is that you could have been exposed years ago, and only today you're having symptoms. And so it kind of creates a conundrum oftentimes, because it's like you now have had, let's say, 4 different partners. You're not even sexually active for the last 6 months. But meanwhile, here you are with an active outbreak. and your doctor, or you're not even having an active outbreak, you're just coming in for your routine testing and you say, hey, I'd like to have STI testing. I'd like to be tested for herpes as well. Okay, your herpes test comes back positive. And then you're like, how is that possible? I haven't even been sexually active for at least 6 months. So now you have to backtrack and try to figure out 4 partners ago, like how did I get this?
Right. So
who gave it to me? Who do I go back and talk to? Who did I just get it? Did I get it 20 years ago? Did I get it 2 months ago? Did I get it 3 years? Like that is where the complication of giving the diagnosis of herpes, especially when we give the diagnosis just through blood. Granted, it's still an important thing to know. It might be the thing, with your first sexual encounter or the first time you go to get sexually transmitted disease testing, that you ask for it, because it's better that you know the sooner you know, right? Or to have a baseline, to be able to say, in 2008, when I had this test done, I did not have this thing. So if in 2019, now I'm testing positive, well, somewhere in between, I got it.
Because even if you don't have symptoms, it would still show in your blood work if you have herpes.
That is correct. If you were exposed to it and if you actually got the virus, then yes, it will show up in your blood whether you're having symptoms or not. Usually, in terms of the more ideal situation, is in order to really confirm that what you're having is in fact herpes, is when someone does come in with the suspicious lesion or suspicious symptoms, and we actually see something that we can test. That is usually a time when doctors say, I'm going to test you for herpes because I suspect that this may be the cause of whatever the symptom. Okay? Because they can see something that they can then test for.
So is that also blood work or it's different?
And that would be an actual culture.
Okay.
Yeah. And then we can also still, not just by doing culture, but at the same time, simultaneously also send blood work. But the goal truly of this particular talk, outside of just education, understanding what herpes is, understanding how it presents, is so that we can take away so much of the shame that is associated with it. The stigma, giving the news that I can tell somebody that they have chlamydia and they're like, oh, really? Like, they're so matter of fact with it. But let me say that they have herpes. Oh my God. It's like the world just came crashing down and their life is over. They feel so much shame, guilt, just defeated. Dirty. Okay. And the real reality is that the reason why herpes is so easily spread is because oftentimes when you do have symptoms, by the time you even get to the doctor, like call the office, say, hey, I'm feeling a little uncomfortable. I'd like to come in and see the doctor. Okay. And then the secretary gives you an appointment, let's say 5 days later, whatever the symptoms are that you were having, they're gone. And so if you're having symptoms, herpes is not what's on your mind, then you start to think of other things that seem to make more quote unquote sense. I went to the gym. I stayed in my clothes too long. I was riding the bike too long. My panties were too tight. Okay. And that's how come I felt a little uncomfortable. I must have changed the soap that I used, and that's why I'm feeling uncomfortable.
Or I have a yeast infection and it went away.
I had a yeast infection and it just went away.
Yeah.
There's just so many ways in which we can justify, quote unquote, some of the symptoms that are very vague, quite frankly, when it comes to herpes. And like I said, by the time you actually get to the doctor, your symptoms can potentially be completely gone.
You said that before, is that it's very common. It's a very common is also because it spreads because most people don't really realize that they have it because the symptoms are gone, and then they might have new partners and then it gets spread that way.
That's exactly how STDs work. People don't realize that they have something. They don't realize that they may have been exposed, and then they spread it without knowing that they're spreading it. So this is clearly not, and the reason for that is because it's your quote unquote first love. It's your quote unquote, those first kind of sexual experiences tend to be with people that you think you can trust, or that quote unquote, them so well. Those first sexual encounters oftentimes are people who do not use protection, unfortunately. And this is why sexually transmitted diseases spread, and herpes in particular. The other reason is because condoms only protect you 50% of the time from herpes. So, to add fuel to fire, okay, you do the right thing. You do protect yourself and, practice safe sex, and you get it anyway. Because of the fact that it can live in other parts of your genitalia. You can become exposed through other parts of the genitalia, not only through penetrative sex. And so that is the reason why even wearing a condom, though definitely better than not, let's be clear, it protects you at least 50% of the time. Okay. But of course, there's that other 50% that you may still be exposed.
It actually means that anybody can have herpes.
Anybody.
Even if they've never had a symptom. I mean, that's the bottom line.
That is the bottom line.
So we have to almost assume, like when we are having a new partner, or even with the same partner for that matter, but that anybody can, even if they say, oh, I'm clean, everything's fine. I guess the only way that we know that the person is does not have herpes, or yourself, is if you get tested regularly, and it is negative.
That is correct. It just stresses the importance of sex. This is why I say this is healthcare. This is just healthy care, taking care of self-care. Self-care is getting healthcare. Getting healthcare is checking on a routine basis. And that can be kind of arbitrary. I mean, I like to say on an at least annual basis, but for some people, it might be every 6 months to go and have an STD check, and I say this especially even with the older population. So that's another problem, is that people, as they get older, again, tend to become a little bit more relaxed with safe sex practices, as people get older, even up in their 50s, 60s, people who are in nursing homes or in, senior living. At the end of the day, people are living longer. They have a lot of vitality, and they are getting busy. It's true.
Right. It's true. There's senior homes now. They're all hanging out together.
They're having all kinds of outbreaks in senior homes, not just of herpes, syphilis, chlamydia, gonorrhea, HIV. This is not just the one thing. And the real reason, I think, again, is because they're no longer worried about pregnancy. So someone who's, early, just postmenopausal or what have you, and they're in their second act of life, and they've met their new second partner, the person of their dreams. And they, again, like the people in the beginning, when they're first getting started in a sexual life, they said they were clean. They've never had anything.
Which might have been true.
Listen,
it's not they're trying to lead them on or anything.
Yes, I agree with you. It's just, again, that quote unquote, just blind trust and how we interact in these different times of our lives. So the thing I would say is that where herpes is concerned is getting regular testing. And you may get pushback. Your physicians may be like, why do you need to get tested for that? If you're not having this, why do you want to know? Why do you need to get tested? And you say, because I want to know, because I don't want to be the conduit for spreading this thing. If I have it, I want to know. Because at the end of the day, herpes is a virus that is not curable, but certainly it is a manageable disease. It is one that has treatment options that make it so that you are less likely to spread the virus. And that's important.
So let me ask you this, like if you are showing symptoms, if you are having some lesions, or if you have some sensations of pain versus not having it, what is the tendency of transmission one versus the other? Like, do you have a tendency to transmit it more, if you're having an outbreak?
When you're having an outbreak, you're definitely much more likely to spread the virus. And so prevention of outbreaks will decrease your transmission of the virus.
And also, if you're not having those symptoms, then automatically the spreading or the shedding is reduced versus if you're having an outbreak.
When you're having an outbreak, you're actively having viral shedding. Absolutely.
Okay, so that increases the chance of transmission.
Definitely increases the chance of transmission.
Okay, so that's number one.
Step one is finding out if whether or not you have it in the first place.
Okay.
Period. Okay. Meaning getting regular testing. Because whether you have symptoms or not, getting regular testing helps you to know if whether or not you've ever been exposed and if you have the potential to spread the virus. So we'll start there. Step two, if you do know that you have the virus, don't have sex during the time that you know you have symptoms of the virus.
So we talked about number one, get tested. Number two, if you're having any symptoms, not to engage in sexual activity. What would be number three?
If you do know you have herpes and you are in a relationship and both you and your partner have been tested and you know that your partner does not have it, then maybe that's a conversation that you have about whether or not you should be on suppressive therapy. What does that mean? Where you take an antiviral, something that works specifically against the herpes virus, in order to suppress it so that it's not shedding actively in your body. It decreases the transmission of herpes to your partner who may not have it.
Is that something that you take just continually?
Continuously, you take it every day, especially if you're regularly engaging in sexual activity. So if you're someone who's not sexually active, then no, you don't need to be on that therapy unless you're someone who, for some people, they get outbreaks often. Some people don't get them at all. For people who get them often, again, just because of the discomfort they may feel or the symptoms that they may have if they're having an outbreak, so that they're not feeling it, then yes, they may need to be on what we call suppressive therapy. This is why I'm so glad we're having the conversation, because it's just so many different angles when it comes to this thing. Okay?
It's the jack of all trades.
It's just the jack of all trades of sexually transmitted infections. And it's annoying in so many ways, but it's also, I promise, manageable. And moreover, I really want to take away the feeling of stigma, dirty, just shame and guilt that comes along with it. So you're having an outbreak. You feel the symptoms coming on. And the funny thing is that when it comes to herpes, is that you can have like what we call prodrome. A prodrome is the symptoms before the symptoms before the signs. So let's say you may feel tingly, itchy, burning, your skin may feel a little hot in that area, but you don't have any blisters, you don't have any ulcers, you don't have any pimple-like bumps, you don't have any of those things, but your body is telling you, hey, I'm fighting something. That would be the time to start taking your antiviral. That would be the time to start taking your herpes treatment. Why? Because that would help prevent the outbreak. Now, if you're someone who doesn't really get outbreaks, or you may not recognize the quote unquote prodrome, and you only see perhaps when the blisters come, it's as soon as you see the sign or the symptom, you start taking the medicine. And that will help it to not last as long. Typically lasts anywhere from 3, 5, 7 days, and then it's gone. If you take the antivirals, it can help it to last, a few days less. So for example, if you were going to have an outbreak and it was going to last 5 days, maybe it only lasts 2.
When you have a patient and you realize that you have to tell them that they have herpes, what is usually their reaction?
I usually start by saying, I do have something I need to tell you. It may upset you, but I'm here to let you know that this is not your fault. Mm-hmm. This does not mean that something's wrong with you, that you're dirty, that you're promiscuous, that you're sleeping around, because these are all the myths and the stigmas that surround herpes, specifically as it's like the STD of dirty.
A promiscuous and
you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so I usually start the conversation and preference it there. Then I go into the fact that herpes is a virus. It's a virus like so many other viruses that we're exposed to on a regular basis. I don't want to diminish it and make it as small per se as, let's say, the common cold. I do like people to feel like you're going to get over it. It's going to be okay. And the same way when if you had a cold, you'd be like, okay, I know I'm going to be sick for a couple of days and then I'm going to be better. And I like to at least give people something tangible to work with, in the sense that if you're having an outbreak, yes, you may feel uncomfortable. You'll feel that way for a few days and then you'll be better. This is not a virus that has any long-term effects on your body or that's going to kill you even, because I do think that people definitely think that when they get a diagnosis of herpes, that it means that am I going to die from this? And people really are concerned. Mm-hmm. And so it's important for us to express and understand and educate and say, okay, yes, unfortunately, herpes is a non-curable disease, but it certainly is not one that's going to kill you.
I think it's very unfortunate the way that herpes has been like the pun of the jokes in culture, and sort of making fun of people who have that. They don't really talk about that when you talk about gonorrhea or chlamydia. Like herpes is the one that keeps coming up, and it makes it more of a heavier subject for people because of that. It's so interesting because when you really just look at it objectively.
Yes.
Okay. When you look at it objectively, nobody's freaking out or saying somebody's dirty when they see somebody having a cold sore, right? They just say, oh, you shouldn't like kiss me.
Yes.
That's it.
That's correct.
But meanwhile, it's the same type of virus. It's just another strain of it. And it's like night and day. And that, I think we need to realize the ridiculousness of that.
It's even in the same family as the chicken pox. The chicken pox, which if you're of a certain age, you got it as a kid because, Jimmy in 3rd grade got it and then the whole damn 3rd grade got it. Mm-hmm. Like I remember that. I remember getting the chicken pox when I was 8. Mm-hmm. And guess what? When you have had the chicken pox, that chicken pox virus stays in your body forever. Mm. And it has the potential to be reactivated. So guess what? When it's reactivated, we call it shingles. And no, nobody wants shingles. It's very painful. It's very uncomfortable. It usually shows up as painful blisters. Okay. Because it's in the same family. They have some of the same symptoms. And at the end of the day, just like chickenpox, herpes can be annoying, itchy, blisters, painful, etc. And it shows up when your immune system is low.
Right. But you're not feeling dirty when you have shingles.
You're absolutely right. Nobody feels dirty when they have shingles. Right. And this is why we're having the conversation.
Right. And also cold sores, yeah, it might feel a little embarrassing to have it, But again, it's not like you feel like that level of guilt or shame. So this is, I mean, at the end of the day, I think the reason why I'm just like bringing this up like over and over is it's just in our minds. It's not reality.
Well, it's not reality in the sense of it doesn't have to be the worst thing ever.
Exactly.
It's manageable. It does happen. No, nobody wants it. Just like I did not want chickenpox when I was in the 3rd grade. And I'm not trying to downplay this. It's more so to make it understandable and for people to realize that this is a livable condition that can be managed, and if you know about it, how to protect yourself and others in a very responsible way.
If somebody is having a hard time with the diagnosis of having herpes,
the first thing I tell them is check your partner. Or before you get into a new relationship, if you're someone, because that's usually the place where they have the hardest time. Someone who knows that they actually have herpes already, and they're now going into a new relationship. How do they tell their new partner or future partner that they have herpes? And the first thing I say is get them tested, because unfortunately, it actually is relatively common. So the possibility that your partner may already have it, and again, be in that group of people that doesn't know, because so many people who have herpes or have been exposed to herpes never get symptoms, never get tested, and never know. And so if you have it, the first thing I always say, make sure your partner is tested before you move into a new sexual relationship.
Okay, so let's say that the other person gets tested and doesn't have it. What happens?
Well, yes, they need to definitely disclose the fact that they have it, and then it's a conversation.
Okay.
I've seen it. This is definitely not what I'm advocating, but I've definitely seen it where two people decide that they want to be together, and then the person who doesn't have it says, if I get it, I get it. And if I don't, I don't. You're the person I want to be with. How big of a deal is this? I may never even have a symptom or outbreak. I really want to be with you. And then, that's a conversation that then becomes truly a private conversation. I do my part. I'm trying to prevent the disease from being spread.
Mm-hmm.
That is the point.
Mm-hmm.
And so, with information and being informative and making sure that patients get tested and talking to them openly about it and helping to empower them to have these type of hard conversations with their partners, etc. But ultimately, it's up to them.
Mm-hmm.
And for some people, they're like, oh, I can get a little something. It sounds like it's not really that big of a deal. If I get it, I get it. If I don't, I don't. I'm nobody's judge.
Mm-hmm.
I simply give information.
Mm-hmm. And what about the second situation if the other person tested positive?
If both people have it, then they have it. There's no, I'm going to now give it to you.
Okay.
You already have it. You're not going to give it to me. I already have it.
Okay, right.
So do what you do.
All right. Okay. Do you find that over the years that the stigma around it when you tell your patients has decreased, increased, or has stayed the same?
I kind of feel like it stayed the same. I don't really see it as something that's increased or decreased. I definitely feel like it's kind of have an even kind of pulse to it. There's a bucket of people who don't even know what herpes is. For others, when I say, I think what you're describing may be a herpes outbreak, they are incomplete. They're like, I don't know what you're talking about, Dr. Lubin. That's not even possible. And then automatically put up the defenses. And then for others, I say, I think you may be having, a herpes outbreak. And they're like, is this something that happens before? I think I may have had this before. And then that starts to cause a whole backtrack of, is that the thing I get every time, like every couple of times a year before my period?
Is there usually an increased frequency of having it before a period?
Yes.
Okay.
There is. It's an interesting question, and it is a thing. And the reason why is because, like I said, anytime our immune system goes down even a little bit, gives the virus an opportunity to show itself. When women are menstruating, your body is saying, I need to rest and recover during this time of menses. And your immune system is down a little bit. And so the time leading up to menses, yes, oftentimes women tend to have outbreaks right around that time.
So when people find out that they have it, when you tell them, is it more about the guilt upon themselves, or is it like or they're trying to figure out who gave that to them?
Who gave it to them? Did they just get it? That's usually the first set of questions. And unfortunately, like I said, it's the one thing I'm like, I can't tell you who gave it to you. I don't know how you got it. I don't know when you got it. It's so different from something like, let's say, gonorrhea, because gonorrhea, you typically will have symptoms within 7 to 10 days of being exposed. And those symptoms are very annoying. And they also don't just go away. So therefore, you're more likely to seek care and then be diagnosed with it and then get treated for it. So it's a lot easier. If you're exposed, you get symptoms within a certain amount of time, you go to the doctor, and then you can backtrack. Well, I know I was with such and such person 2 weeks ago. That's where I got this gonorrhea from. And that, in that sense,
it's more direct.
It's a lot more direct in terms of being able to have a sense of where, how.
A resolve.
Or have a sense of resolve,
right.
Or an understanding. Where herpes is concerned, unfortunately, it just doesn't come that way.
It's the ambiguous STI.
It's so ambiguous. Oh, I mean, honestly, it's the hardest conversation that I have on a weekly basis.
Really?
It really is. It's the hardest conversation because I have to then help someone build them back up to who they were when they first walked into my office versus who they are walking out of my office now with this news. And it's trying to keep them the same. You're not a different person. You are a person who now has this, and we can manage it. And it's not your fault. It doesn't make you dirty. It doesn't make you unable to have children. Of course, there's the implications of whether or not, now that I have herpes, that means I can never have kids. No, that's absolutely not true. So it requires a lot of care, which is fine because that's the kind of person I am and the kind of care that I like to provide my patients anyway. But it's hard to watch. It's hard to see sometimes.
So if somebody out there has had it or have it and has not had the type of care that you mentioned, what could you tell them? Like if they needed to hear it from a caring ObGyn doctor, health practitioner.
The bottom line is if you get a diagnosis of herpes, you need to know that you are going to be okay. You're going to be okay. You are not at fault. You are still whole. You are still beautiful. You can still have a sexual life. You definitely do not have to feel ashamed.
And you'll be okay.
You will be okay. The point here was definitely not to sugarcoat. The point here was to encourage people to feel like they are still themselves despite having this kind of a diagnosis. You are okay. It's okay. You're gonna be fine. And life doesn't have to end. Life will go on in an equally beautiful way for you. And that you just need to embrace your body, embrace yourself. Thank you for listening to this very interesting, difficult, curiously,
a little messy, a little ambiguous,
a little bit of everything kind of episode. We appreciate having you here today. Bye.
Thank you so much for listening. Bye.
This is general medical information based on my professional opinion and experience. For specific medical advice, please refer to your physician. Until next time, embrace your body, embrace yourself.